Hello everyone and welcome to the Constructive Criticism Network. This network is here to help you improve at Magic the Gathering at every level. From Pauper Leagues to Top 1000 Mythic, we've got you covered. If you want to hear the entire network, head on over to our sponsor at puremtgo.com, where you can hear each and every show, each and every week, and check out their sponsor, MTGO Traders, and tell them that the CCMTG Network sent you. Now sit back, enjoy the show. From YouTube, podcasts, and more, here's this week's episode from ConstructiveCriticism.com.
Hello everybody, and welcome to episode 143 of the Common Knowledge Podcast. I'm your host Christian, and I'm joined by our co-host, Mind Leech Cool.
Hello everybody.
Before we get too far into this episode, I just want to remind everyone that Common Knowledge and all of the podcasts on the Constructive Criticism Network are sponsored by puremtgo.com. If you would like to support the show, make sure to like, share, and subscribe to the Constructive Criticism YouTube channel, and check out our Patreon. With that out of the way, let's get on with the podcast for the week.
Woohoo! New cards!
Yeah, man. So what's been going on with you this week?
Not much, actually. Work has been very hectic. We're trying to wrap up our schedule, our 2021 schedule, but we got approval through our customer that we can start on 2022 work as soon as we're done with this year's work. But we've got people kind of all over the state wrapping everything up, so it's just been kind of hectic. End of the year craziness, trying to get ready for the holiday. Not sure if we're going to go to family's house or have family over or have no one over. I don't think we've fully decided yet. But yeah, I think that's really about it. Just work and chilling out at the house. What about you?
Yeah, no, not much. Today, we took my daughter to this big trampoline park, basically, where she got to jump around, spend some energy there. It's always a super fun time to see her getting to do something fun like that. She's kind of like a timid child around other children. So, like, it's always funny because, like, she'll, like, be jumping on a trampoline, and if she sees kids, like, jumping near her, she'll, like, stand off to the side until they, like, leave and, like, watch them. And I'm always like, Harper, go play with them. And she's like, no, but I digress.
Yeah, no, our son's the same way. He'll definitely give way to the other kids if...
But I know you mentioned the upcoming holiday. Are you big into Thanksgiving food?
I am. Surprisingly, I'm not a huge fan of turkey. Generally with poultry, I like the dark meat. You know, chicken, I like the dark meat, the legs, the thighs, all that stuff. Turkey, even the dark meat, is just usually too dry for me. I've only had a couple turkey meals in my life that were nice and juicy and cooked properly. Not that any of them that I've had are like from bad cooks or bad chefs or anything. I don't think I have a taste for turkey, but I love all the sides. I love all the mashed taters and mac and cheese and all that stuff you can give me and all the desserts. I'm big on desserts. What about yourself?
I've guessed the past 2 years I've been getting into it more, would be a good way to put it.
Okay.
Where, like, when I was younger, I could not stand Thanksgiving. I thought most of the food was very overrated. I didn't understand why there were so many people celebrating the, like, overrated food. But as I've gotten older, you know, sweet potato casserole,
oh,
great.
It's my favorite.
Mac and cheese, great. A good ham is untouchable.
Yep. Ham is my favorite. Hands down.
Yeah.
Yep.
Like, all that put together is just so good. The fact that nobody looks at you sideways whenever you start making your third plate. Like,
yeah, your third helping of ham, your fourth piece of pie, and some cookies. And
oh, yeah.
You a big dessert fan, or you just go straight for the hot food, the hot main meal?
I'm not really big into sweets. I will say that there is something about, like, a warm piece of pumpkin pie with ice cream that just gets me.
It is the best. Pumpkin pies, I could eat that all year round. Actually, we've made 2 pumpkin pies in the last, like, 3 weeks, and I pretty much ate both of them. I love it.
Yeah, so that's what we got to look forward to in the not Magic the Gathering world. Have you been able to play any this past week?
I haven't sat down too much. I just been looking at the new set, going through some of my paper cards, updating a few decks, just sort of staring at them, if you will, shuffling up a few hands, goldfish and this and that. But as far as MTGO or playing against an actual person, I haven't really done much of that for the aforementioned reasons. What about yourself?
Yeah, I've been playing a fair bit of Burn, sort of the same thing as last time around, just burning all the formats. I've been kind of thinking about picking up Elves like recently, or like something like that, whether that be like Walls, Cascade combo, or Elves or whatever. I think that those decks, like, they're kind of soft to interaction, I would say. But, like, the raw speed and power level of those decks makes me think that they can win regardless of metagame.
Is that why you're kind of tossing around Elves or Walls? Is it just like the big go wide bunch of mana super fast deck that you want to get into?
Yeah, exactly. Because like I said, like, I think at its worst, those decks are still potent enough to steal matches.
Sure.
And at their best, they're some of the best decks in the format.
Yep.
So it's just always worth being able to play a deck like that.
Yeah, absolutely. Been a while since I played Elves. I don't know that I've actually ever played a full match with Walls combo. I think I've taken it to the practice room and maybe jammed a game or two, but I definitely don't know enough about it to pilot successfully. I know about it as a spectator or as a victim, but...
That's a really good way to put it.
Yeah,
so I guess that's the decks that we've been into. If you want it, we can just go ahead and jump into this week's main topic.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's do it.
So this week we're doing our Crimson Vow set review. We're doing it slightly different than we have in the past. We've decided to each pick a card or two from multiple different categories to sort of speak about why we like them in those categories instead of doing a literal review of each and every card that's going to be Pauper legal. Yeah,
like you mentioned, even with just two people, 100 plus cards can get to be kind of a slog, kind of rough, and it always ends up where the first couple dozen or so, we're all excited and we're brewing with them or we're tossing decks out, this and that, but by card like 87 or 94, we're just like, and here's another one, and here's another one. Our eyes are crossed and we can't read. Yeah,
exactly that. So we just basically decided that, if we each picked like a spell and a creature and build around cards and stuff like that, it may go a little bit better. We can be excited throughout the entire thing. It's less of a slog to make and less of a slog to listen to as well. So our first category that we had up was removal spell.
Removal. It's one of the most important aspects in Pauper, I believe.
I guess I'll go ahead and start it off. The removal spell that I picked was, I think, a pretty popular card when it was fully spoiled, was Gift of Fame, which is basically just deadweight, just an aura that gives -2/-2. But if a creature is a vampire, it gets +2/+2 instead. So it's deadweight with upside, depending on your deck. To me, that's just the best not upgrade removal spell.
Yeah, absolutely. It does ask for a little bit as far as, the creature has to be a vampire, but now with this set and what we've had in the past and, including changelings and stuff, that's not a huge ask anymore. So it's never really is. It's one of those that's never really a dead card. But yeah, we definitely both agreed on that. I had another one that's kind of a secondary to that, and it's the Lacerate Flesh. It's a red removal card that creates blood tokens. I think blood tokens are really going to have to be a strategy in Pauper for cards like that to see a lot of play, so I won't go too deep into that one.
So that was the removal category. And then up next, we had the creature category. What was your creature this time around?
My creature, this is one of the ones that I noticed got the most attention when it was spoiled, basically because of past cards we have that it's very similar to. It is Kessig Flame Breather. For a red and a 1 generic, you get a 1/3 human shaman. And it says, whenever you cast a non-creature spell, Kessig Flame Breather deals 1 damage to each opponent. So it's basically a mix of Firebrand Archer and Thermal Alchemist, which both see play all the time, every day.
I also had Kessig Flame Breather as my creature. I don't know if that's just because of how much burn I've been playing or because it's the best creature. I really like this potentially over Firebrand Archer just because, this being a 1/3 means it can sometimes play defense in the same way that Thermo Alchemist can.
Yep, absolutely.
And, if they don't have anything going on, you still get to attack with it. I'm still not convinced that it's better than Thermo Alchemist just because Thermo Alchemist can deal that 1 damage, even if you aren't casting spells, at least once a turn.
Yeah, I definitely don't think this is a replacement for Alchemist.
But, whenever you're bringing in, your Firebrand Archers out of the board, maybe instead you're bringing in Kessig Flame Breathers now.
Mm-hmm.
which I think is a pretty positive thing. Either way, it's nice to have similar effects on slightly different bodies, just so there is more diversity and choice.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think you said it all right there. It's a good breakdown. I like it. I've already seen it earlier today put into like I don't know what you want to call it, like a storm type deck, a blitz type deck, and it seemed to do pretty well. So I think it's going to see a lot of play, and it wouldn't surprise me at all if Firebrand Archer just stopped seeing play altogether because of it.
Yeah, that honestly wouldn't shock me either.
Yeah. What's our next category, mister?
Yeah, so our next category is kind of a weird one. It's best build around card.
And what would you say your definition of build around is?
A card that's thing could be powerful, but doesn't fit. Like, it basically any card that builds its own deck based around it.
There you go.
Now, I sort of cheated for what I put here. I just put blood tokens in general. And the reason that I put that is because of how much they enable Madness step. Yeah. I think Madness could potentially be like something that you're looking to build with blood tokens.
I would think so. I would hope so anyway. Maybe I just love Madness, but yeah, that would be awesome. I'm kind of, I don't want to say worried because it's not surprising, but I'm sure that Affinity is going to find some way to use and abuse the blood tokens, which is fine. WotC has been pumping out artifact tokens quite a bit lately in the past few years, so it's just another resource for them. But yeah, I would love if Madness came back in one form or another.
Yeah, absolutely. I would as well. What was your build around card this time around?
I kind of went almost the same way you did, but I had a creature in mind here. It's a red creature. It's Vuldarin Epicure. For a single red, it's a 1/1 vampire, so not much there. But it does say when Vuldarin Epicure enters the battlefield, it deals 1 damage to each opponent, and then you create a blood token. So I do like that. I like that it ETBs with a blood token. It ETBs with a little bit of damage. You know, you can bounce it. You can do all these sort of crazy things. So it just seems like it has a lot of value. I like it. I don't know that it's going to spawn like a whole archetype or its own deck or anything, but I definitely want to brew with it.
Yeah, I think that's like another deck that is worth looking into is any sort of like red-black grindy deck can really take advantage of the blood tokens.
Yep, I'm looking at like a Rakdos Control sort of thing.
Yep, or even like a mid-rangey sort of deck.
Yeah, sure.
Just something that could really take advantage of needing to filter cards in the mid and late game. And then if you have any sort of like graveyard synergy, it's even better.
Yeah, absolutely. You could, pair it alongside of Insolent Neonate. That's another vampire. You could slot in Gift of Fangs, and there you go.
Yeah, well, our next category coming up is going to be Best Spell.
Yep, this could be instant, sorcery, what have you, but just kind of the best overall spell that we like from the set.
Yeah, so what did you think the best spell was going to be?
I think my choice for the best spell, and it kind of has been since it was spoiled, and it was spoiled fairly early as far as commons are concerned, is Vampire's Kiss. It's a black and 1 for a sorcery. Target player loses 2 life, you gain 2 life, and create 2 blood tokens. This can get pretty silly when you're running it in some sort of Metalcraft deck, an Affinity deck. I mean, basically, you could almost have Metalcraft on turn 1 if you worked it right with just this card. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, absolutely. And also, please play this card in any sort of mono-black aggressive deck.
Mm-hmm.
Especially Black Burn.
Black Burn, yep, absolutely. Because that deck already is sort of light on mana and can struggle with that. So helping you filter through your hand, through your deck a little bit quicker can help quite a bit.
Yep, absolutely agree. I think this card is just like a slam dunk. This was so close to being my number 1.
Right.
That, if the card that I picked for best spell didn't exist, this definitely would have been it.
Yeah, this definitely got a lot of eyes. And that's one way I can usually tell when a common is spoiled how good it is by the reactions of players on social media that typically play different archetypes. Like I saw some blue-black players, excited for this. I saw some mono-black players excited for this. I saw Affinity players really excited for this. So that tells me right there that it's probably going to see quite a bit of play across the board.
I definitely agree. I think that it's going to see some amount of play. My choice was something that I think is a little bit more speculative because I'm not sure that it's going to end up being the best card.
Mm-hmm.
But I think if it is the best spell from the format, it will have an impact that will last for a very long time on Pauper.
Yeah, a huge impact.
That card is Reckless Impulse. It's a sorcery for a red and a 1. You exile the top 2 cards of your library, and until the end of your next turn, you may play those cards. Does this remind you of anything?
It reminds me of 2 things, but it reminds me of, first of all, a Pauper Legal card, Galvanic Relay, and then it also has hints of, what is that, Light Up the Stage?
Yeah, so it reminds me of Light Up the Stage, but what this really reminds me of is multi-format All-Star Expressive Iteration.
Oh, okay.
I don't think this card is as good as Expressive Iteration, obviously.
Sure.
But I think the effects are very similar. And I think, this card could see play in Burn. It could see play in Blue-Red Fairies, potentially. I think it could see play just basically across the board in red decks.
Yeah, I think so too. I think right off the top of my head, I think its more powerful home is going to be in some sort of Storm deck maybe, or like you said, a Blue-Red deck, a spell-heavy deck. I mean, we've had Galvanic Relay, but it's not, it's kind of the same. But I love that we have this effect in Pauper. It feels powerful without feeling broken, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, I will say where the Expressive Iteration comparison kind of stops is this card doesn't play as well with counterspells, which I think a lot of the more mid-rangey decks that you would want to play with this would be blue-based counterspell decks. So that's kind of iffy, right? Because if you turn over a counterspell, your opponent's going to know that it's there and will know when not to cast their spells.
Oh, yeah, sure.
But nevertheless, I think this card is really impressive. I could see it seen play in a blue-red Serpentine curve as well. Blue-red Spellslinger with Thermo Alchemist and Firebrand Archer and just the whole lot.
Yeah, that was one of my first thoughts, was an Izzet Serpentine curve type list. Yep, that'd be fantastic. Now, since we did our last episode on Burn and you've been playing a lot of Burn, how do you like this card in Burn?
I plan on playing this card a lot in Burn, I think, just to see if it's good. What is really intriguing to me is the fact that you can play this, flip over those 2 cards, and then just literally have 3 cards to cast on your next turn. This is the ultimate set them up for a big finish on your next turn card. And that's very much what I think Pauper Burn is anyways. It's just set them up for one turn, a 1-turn kill. And so because that's how I feel about this, that deck, and this card I think enables more let's finish them off in 1 turn.
Yeah,
I think that this card should slot in nicely. That being said, it's always kind of weird to play a card like this in a deck like Burn, and the reason why is because you don't actually know what this card is in your opening hand, so your mulligan decisions get a little bit more difficult.
Sure.
Because you could pay 2 mana and flip over 2 lands with this.
Yeah.
And it's I wouldn't keep a Burn hand that had, 2 extra lands than what I wanted, right?
Right.
But either way, I think this card's very good. And it's nice, you can play the lands that you do exile with it. If you do exile 2 lands, well, that's just, your land this turn, your land next turn.
Yeah, that's just you hitting curve right on time.
Yeah, I think this card's going to be plenty good. I'm really excited about it.
I think so too. I think it's going to be kind of fun, kind of funny to in fast decks like Burn or, an Izzet style Spellslinger deck where you just, flip over the top 2 and those 2, are going to be your finishers. Like in Burn, if you flip over a Bolt and a Fire Blast, your opponent's going to be scrambling to come up with answers. And I kind of like that line, that gameplay.
Yeah, no, I'm very excited about this card.
Yeah.
I'm very excited to play it in Pauper.
And really, it's so easy to cast. It's just a red and 1. Literally can go in any deck. Yeah, I love it. I do love it.
Up next, we have kind of a weird category coming up. It's called Non-Creature Permanent. And I think you and I actually had the same choice for this one.
We did. Would you like to reveal that to the people?
So the best non-creature permanent that we both thought was going to make an instant impact on Pauper, or at least I thought it, and I think that you think that as well, is Blood Fountain.
Blood Fountain. Yep.
So for a singular black, you get an artifact that whenever it enters the battlefield, it creates a blood token. And you can pay a black and 3, tap and sacrifice Blood Fountain to return up to 2 target creature cards from your graveyard to your hand. I don't know why you thought this card was powerful, but I thought it was powerful because for 1 mana, you get to make 2 artifacts in your affinity deck.
Yep.
And then late game, you get to return 2 Mirror Enforcers to your hand.
And probably cast them for free.
Yep.
Yeah, that's 100% what I was thinking. I mean, turn 1, Vault of Whispers, Blood Fountain, you just hit Metalcraft on turn 1. You know what I'm saying? That is huge, 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 huge. And when, like you were saying, you get back 2 creatures that are essentially going to be free anyway, this card is just kind of a slam dunk. I don't know if you need 4 of them, but in my eyes, it is a slam dunk for sure. And the art's really sweet. It literally is a blood fountain with the wine glasses at the bottom collecting the blood. Beautiful.
It's good art as well.
Yeah, very good art.
Yeah, no, I'm very excited for this card. I think the blood token can also do a lot of work because, like, again, it's just something that you can have for late game. Like when you're Affinity and you really need like your last Galvanic Blast, like this is just another way to filter to get to that.
Sure. Even Rakdos control list we mentioned earlier could use something like this. It always needs card filtering, and if you're playing 2017, 2018 Magic, you can always sacrifice that blood token if you don't need it to a Kuldotha Rebirth or what have you, get some tokens out of it or whatever.
I think Blood Fountain is a slam dunk.
Yeah.
I think this is another instant impact card.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if you feel the same way. I think Crimson Vow is actually a very, very powerful set thus far from what we've talked about.
Yeah, I agree. It really did kind of hit the ground running as far as commons go. I mean, there's a handful of ones that are like obviously for limited, target creature gets -X -O or whatever, silly enchantments, that sort of thing. But it's, for the most part, you're scrolling through the colors and there's not really a card that, I mean, granted, I like to brew a lot, but most of the cards here I can see playing in some sort of deck, whether it's blue-black zombies or, spirits or humans or what have you. All these cards have some sort of playability in my mind, and I can't often say that about a standard set, so I'm pretty high on this one.
Yeah, I agree. I think all of these cards are very, very good, and even the sideboard cards, which funny enough is our next category.
Right.
There's some powerful ones there. I think we actually had the same sideboard card as well picked out.
We do. This one is, like you said, is for our sideboard pick here. It's probably going to be, I know I'll be playing it a lot. It'll probably see quite a bit of play. It is Sanctify. For a white and a generic, it's a sorcery. You destroy target artifact or enchantment, and you gain 3 life. Pretty straightforward, pretty simple, but it's got a lot going for it, so I like it. The art is amazing. It's going to look great in foil. Pretty clean design, I think.
Yeah, every time we get some sort of disenchant variant, my heart gets happy. I think this is another good one, because with the affinity decks taking a more aggressive stance, especially something like a Tog were to ever get banned, this removing a creature and gaining life, I think, is very important.
Yeah.
And, I know it's a sorcery and that can make people not want to play it. I don't think it matters too much at the end of the day, though.
No, I don't think it does either, but at least in the current meta, this card has a lot of applications. Boggles has been kind of everywhere. Obviously, Affinity's everywhere, so I like it. I think it'll do very well, and it's always, I don't think I'll ever be sad if I have one in the sideboard and I manage to draw it game 2 or 3. The only other one I had picked out for possible sideboard is a blue card, which we haven't really talked about any blue cards yet, but it's Cradle of Safety. It's a blue and a 1 for an enchantment aura with flash, and you got to enchant a creature you control. When Cradle of Safety enters the battlefield, enchanted creature gains hexproof until the end of turn, and then enchanted creature gets +1/+1.
Yeah, so what sort of decks did you think this one might be a good fit into?
I think this was more just the brewer in me interested in this card. I know a lot of times when I brew with blue, it's hard to say, I run into a lot of problems facing removal, and I don't generally brew decks with protection or hexproof decks or shroud decks or anything like that. So I feel like anything coming, this is almost Blue's Apostle's Blessing, not quite, because it does have flash, and I'm a fan of enchantments and auras as it is anyway. So I don't know, it kind of ticks all the boxes. I don't know if it'll actually make it into the 75 of any list I create, but I like the fact that it gives hexproof and it's an aura.
Yeah, I agree. I think it has a lot of really interesting effects. Something that did make me, I was originally a little bit higher on it, and then I actually read, I think it was Kendra Smith's article, and they pointed out pretty quickly that this is a functional reprint of a card that we already have in Pauper called Starlit Mantle, and that immediately made me disappointed because it was like, oh, I guess this one isn't good enough. But
that does very much ring a bell.
But looking at the arts, I like the Cradle of Safety art more. So if this effect ever does become good in Pauper, at least now we have that choice.
Oh, yeah. Wah, wah. Yeah, this is pretty much an exact reprint. Sure is. And we know how much Starlit Mantle tore up the meta, so...
Right? Yeah. But our next category, just moving on, is we picked out a bunch of different ones. I don't know if you just basically wanted to, like, rapid fire them off, but cards with instant homes.
Yeah, basically decks that currently exists, regardless of what tier they may happen to be, but cards that'll go right into these decks, not necessarily in the sideboard, but probably my mindset is put them right in the main deck of a deck that already exists and go from there pretty much. But yeah, I started off here. The first one, this was one of the first ones I fell in love with when it was spoiled, but it's Spore Crawler. For 2 and a green, it's a 3/2 fungus, and when it dies, you draw a card. So 3/2 for 3, decent rate for Pauper for a common. The fact that it replaces itself is huge. It's a decent blocker, but I specifically love this card in Tortured Existence. Imagine that. You can get it back with Unearth. You can put it right back in the battlefield. You can sack it to Tortured Existence or discard it to Tortured Existence, get it back, cast it again, keep drawing cards, yada, yada, yada. That's just great. And that's where I think it'll see at least a little bit of play. I don't think it has quite the value of, say, a Llanowar Visionary or something like that. Maybe it does, because it does draw a card, but we'll just have to see.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it could be good in the Tortured Existence deck.
Yeah.
And if it has a home, it's definitely in that deck.
Yeah, definitely some sort of grindy, Golgari type graveyard deck, I think.
Yeah. So what else did you have for the instant homes?
Right there, the next one I had Parish Blade Trainee. For a single generic and a white, you get a 1/2 human soldier. Pretty relevant creature types. This one has Training, which is a new Crimson Vow mechanic. Training says when this creature attacks with another creature with greater power, put a +1/+1 counter on this creature. And then it also says when Parish Blade Trainee dies, put its counters on target creature you control. So I really like this we used to have a mono-white soldiers deck that was it wasn't super great. White Weenie, though, I like this card a lot in White Weenie. I think it could be pretty powerful there. I don't think there's anything too special about it, but I'm sure there's 1 or 2 creatures that already exist in that deck that wouldn't mind being swapped out for this one.
Right, yeah, I think this one's pretty powerful. Just the fact that after it dies, it'll buff other things.
Yeah, even if it's just 1 or 2 counters, that can be a pretty big deal sometime.
Right, it just means that there's going to be, like, tension put on your opponent. Like, what thing do I remove? How do I block? Etc.
Right, exactly. And especially if you're running the type of White Weenies that happens to have flyers and ground threats, I like it. What did you have on the list, sir? I know I got a couple more, but we'll skip over to you real quick.
Yeah, so I had 2 instant homes, both for a podcast favorite and Pauper fan favorite deck, Aristocrat.
Yes.
Up first, I had Mind Leech Ghoul, which cost a black and a 1. It's a 2/2 zombie. It exploits, so whenever this creature enters the battlefield, you may sacrifice a creature. And when Mind Leech Ghoul exploits a creature, each opponent exiles a card from their hand. I think that this will be good in an Aristocrat shell, just because basically it's a sacrifice outlet that also does something else.
Yeah.
That is like right where a lot of those decks want to be.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think that the hand attack on it will be pretty good. And then what I really like about it, though, is its combination with this next card, which is Persistent Specimen.
Yes.
For a singular black, you get a 1/1 skeleton. And then if it's in your graveyard, you can pay 3 mana and return it from your graveyard to the battlefield tapped, which means that these one-off sacrifice outlets get a lot better.
I like those two a lot. That's a really good combination. Persistent Specimen, I know this is the next segment, but that ended up being my favorite card of the set overall because it is natural. It has a natural home in Aristocrats, which is huge. It could go into Tortured Existence. You're never going to get rid of it. But no, Mind Leech Ghoul is very good. You can exploit it to itself if you absolutely need to get a card out of their hand, buff your Mortician Beetles, that sort of thing. It's great.
Yeah, absolutely. I think both of those cards have their instant home in the Aristocrats decks. The numbers, I'm not sure about.
Sure.
That's like definitely the obvious fit to me.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's probably one of those things where, you only want 2, maybe 3 of them, but it is an edict on a stick. So you can't go wrong there, I don't think.
Yeah, so what were your other build-arounds, or not build-arounds, instant home cards?
Yeah, I had a couple more. Actually, I had 3 more, but Vampire's Kiss was one of them, and I think we've already talked about that 2 or 3 times already. So I'll just kind of run through the other 2. I had one in green. It's Massive Might. For a single green, it's an instant. Target creature gets +2/+2 and gains trample. I heard this tossed around, possibly being played in Infect. I'm not sure. I've never actually played Infect anyway, so I don't know if there's something that is worse than this that can be taken out, but I know it's being talked about. So that might find a home in a currently tier 3-ish deck, so we'll have to see. And then the other one is kind of interesting. Honored Heirloom. It's an artifact. Cost 3. You tap to add 1 mana of any color, and then you can spend 2, tap it, and exile a target card from a graveyard. I don't know that this is necessarily, obviously it's not better than Bonder's Ornament, so I don't know how much this is going to see actual 60-card constructed play, but I do love this card in PDH in Pauper Highlander. I think it's going to be awesome.
I know that I mentioned last week that I've been kind of like doing some preliminary PDH builds, and the 3 mana like artifact ramp cards are great, and this is just another one of them with a pretty awesome bonus of that.
Yeah, with that, that ancillary graveyard hate, that could come in pretty handy sometimes. So I think it's pretty good. It's pretty powerful for what it is. I think it's a little innocuous, but I think it's going to be stronger than people give it credit for.
Yeah, after that, we just had our favorite cards. We've actually talked about both of our favorite cards in length.
Yeah.
You had Persistent Specimen.
Yep.
And my favorite card is obviously Reckless Impulse, just because of how I've been feeling about Burn.
Yep.
Yeah. Any other thoughts on this set before we wrap it up?
Aim for the Head is my favorite artwork.
Yeah, and my favorite art is a Braid for what it's worth.
But no, I think it's awesome. There was a couple cards on here that caught my eye as far as like the new mechanic Cleave that comes in. It's a little awkward to look at and to figure out. I'm glad that it seems a lot more straightforward on the commons as opposed to like some of the mythics and rares that are in the set. But that should be interesting. I would like to see if any of the Cleave cards actually make it into competitive realm. But those seem fun. I like Disturb. I actually like some of the Disturb cards better in this set than I did in Midnight Hunt. And then obviously we got Exploit back. So I'm a huge fan of anything that makes you want to sacrifice your creatures. I love it.
Yeah, absolutely. Really exciting set. Really excited to get to play with a lot of these cards. So, it's going to do it for this week's episode of Common Knowledge, I think. If you wanted to get in touch with us, you can find me on Twitter at JessGuyDad. Brad, where can they find you?
At Pauper_B on Twitter or BradDrakV on MTGO.
Yeah, and you can find us both at commonknowledgemtg@gmail.com. If you guys have any questions on the Pauper format, MTGO, or anything else, email us or leave a comment down below. Thanks again to our sponsor, PureMTGO.com, as well as the Constructed Criticism Network for letting us be a part of it. And last, but certainly not least, thank you for listening. Take very good care of each other.
And never stop crashing weddings.